Nicholas pulls up. This is the shot. They got to go quick. And he makes it! A three-pointer to Silva! Unbelievable. Sounds good.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Basketball in the Mountains. Is this thing on? It's been a little bit. Been almost 2 months since the last episode, but this is episode 32 of Basketball in the Mountains. And as always, I am your host, Tyler King. Probably going to be more of the norm going forward, especially, for as long as we get to keep doing this. I really enjoy doing it, but just with the start of the college football season, really with the start of fall camp in the first week of August, that's when my schedule really ramps up. It gets pretty crazy. So we're now a couple weeks into the season for college football, and just, with college basketball practice starting up this week across the country, NBA media days are next week with the season, about a month away. So I'm going to start getting into all of the season preview content for all of the teams here in the Mountain Time Zone, both in the NBA and in college. But I wanted to do kind of a summer catch up. With everything that's been going on. We had some EuroBasket action, a bunch of fun storylines. Not a ton from around the Mountain Time Zone, but basketball doesn't stop. We've got the Kawhi Leonard Clippers saga. Bruce Pearl retired out of nowhere today. Second straight year we've had a legendary college basketball coach retire right before the start of the season. So some injury news and all that kind of stuff, which we'll touch on a little bit today. But I just kind of wanted to go. The last episode I did was that one with UNC Bears coach Steve Smiley at the end of July. So hopefully next summer I'll have bank some interviews with some people that are really involved with these teams in the Mountain Time Zone. That way we can still have some content, not have so much dead time. As August and September are pretty crazy for me with the football stuff. But you guys know me. Everyone that listens to the show knows how much I love basketball and basketball here in the Mountain Time Zone. So super excited to get back to doing that now and having some more regular content. Like I said, hope to have plenty of interviews coming up, previewing the over dozen college basketball teams we have here that are worth talking about, and the 3 NBA teams as well, which we'll touch on today. And to do so, we've got one of our most regular guests, Troy Finnegan from ClutchPoints. Troy, how was we haven't seen you in a minute. How was your summer?
Pretty good, yeah.
It's been a while, but happy to be back on. I'm excited that basketball's kicking back up again. We got football season rolling, but definitely excited to talk some hoops. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I know we always talk football a lot off the pod too, but basketball is kind of the one thing that kind of sparked our friendship and talking hoops. Whether it was Nuggets or covering the Buffs games together. I mean, this is kind of what we live for. So wanted to start with some of the EuroBasket stuff because that was a lot of fun to watch. I didn't watch every game. Obviously, I tried to watch a lot of the knockout phase games. Tried to watch Joker and Serbia when I could. Obviously, Tristan da Silva, Germany, end up winning it all. That was a pretty big play that we had with the intro video today with that buzzer beater Tristan had to end that third quarter against Slovenia, which was a quarterfinal game that Germany ended up making a comeback and winning in that game on the way to their title there in EuroBasket, led by maybe Hall of Famer now, Dennis Schroeder. I don't know. This has kind of been an interesting development this summer. So what was your biggest takeaway from watching EuroBasket? Would you have a lot of fun just getting some summer hoops with some guys we don't always get to see in the spotlight?
Yeah, it was great. I always
like watching those teams play. It's just kind of a unique style to international basketball that I really kind of enjoy. It's a good change up during the off season, and obviously, it's great to see. You have guys like Dennis Schroeder who just evolve into like this different kind of, and there's guys all around on a lot of teams that do it. So that's always fun, kind of seeing them take on a bigger role than you get to see them play in the NBA. And Hall of Famer Dennis Schroeder, maybe.
That'll be a fun development as once his NBA career is finally over, we get to talk about him as the Germany legend, as he's led them to multiple kind of championships in these international competitions. Tristan, I thought he was obviously a key player for Germany. The Buff alum, had a solid rookie season with the Magic. Was it nice to see him kind of get some run with that Germany team This is going to be an important sophomore season for him in the league with all the added expectations for Orlando in a down Eastern Conference. After obviously they acquired Desmond Bane in the offseason, it feels like they could be in for a big step up this season. It feels like he could play a big part in it, especially after a solid summer for him.
Yeah, Orlando's one of those
teams that keeps kind of popping up as like who's going to fill that void in the Eastern Conference. Celtics going to be without Jason Tatum all year. Tyrese Halliburton's going to be out all year. Obviously, you mentioned the Desmond Bane trade and guys like Tristan da Silva. That was kind of one of the things that we talked about with him coming out of college. Was like it was so easy to see how he would kind of fit in as a role player on a good team with good players around him. He could space the floor. He's comfortable with the ball in his hands. Versatile player. And I think we saw some of that in EuroBasket, just contributing to kind of the system in Germany, winning basketball. And I think that will be big for him going into the season. And I think that experience will be valuable for, a big year for him where he, you see these guys in their second year. This is kind of where he needs to cement himself in as a viable rotation player. And I think that this summer will help him in doing that.
Yeah, there was a ton of stars in EuroBasket with Luka averaging a ridiculous amount of points. Giannis was shooting like 70% from the field. Obviously, Joker, that was a pretty stunning upset, watching them get knocked out by Finland. Serbia did in the round of 16. But Joker was still Joker. I mean, I'm sure you saw the highlights. Just kind of was it nice to see him still doing his typical Joker stuff, even though Serbia didn't make kind of the run that people thought they could. They were one of the top contenders, going into the tournament. And then Finland, who was maybe the most pleasant surprise of the whole tournament, knocks them out in that round of 16.
Yeah, I'll never turn down
watching Joker play ball. He was great. The Bogdanovic injury really hurt them.
Yeah.
That was a big. They kind of ran out of options in the backcourt. But yeah, you mentioned Finland. That was a really great game. Lauri, I know we're going to talk about in a second. Was great as well. But yeah, Joker. Sorry, he was great. I thought that he was great. Getting ready for the season. I was, hope he gets some rest. He's played so much basketball in the last couple of years. We've seen him kind of get run down, but yeah, I'm excited to see him get the year started over here.
Yeah, and his backup now, Jonas Valanciunas, one of the more notable additions for the Nuggets in the offseason, was also in action. Lithuania, they made it all the way to the quarterfinals as well. He looked pretty solid. But like you said, the other big star in the Mountain Time Zone from the NBA teams in the Mountain Time Zone, Phoenix didn't really have any involved, but Lauri Markkanen for the Jazz just had an incredible tournament for Finland, leading them to their best ever finish. They made it all the way to the semis, got that fourth place finish. Like I said, their best ever in a EuroBasket. We'll talk about this in a little bit when we hit on each of the NBA teams in kind of the summer catch-up kind of thing. But how impressive was it to see Lauri kind of back to what we saw him kind of break out as a star 2 seasons ago for Utah when he was an all-star, kind of an all-NBA player, and really had peaked as an NBA player. And it was nice to see him, at least I thought, kind of get back to that ahead of what will be an interesting season for Utah at least.
Yeah, you nailed
it. It was kind of a reminder of what made him such an attractive, young player when he broke out. Before, you had the whole dysfunctional Utah situation last year. He's been beat up a little bit, but just watching him being able to knock down shots, being able to create for himself a little bit off the dribble, just being able to be that offensive engine for that Finland team and to be so efficient and so productive doing it, I think. It was getting back to what he was when he broke out onto the scene in the league after getting traded to Utah. And I think it adds a little bit of intrigue to this Jazz team, which is, we'll talk about. It's just such an interesting collection of guys. And if he can be that for them, I think that will go a long way toward making them competitive.
Yeah, and the last guy I wanted to mention from EuroBasket, not a guy that plays for any of the Mountain Time Zone NBA teams, but went to college at U of A down in Tucson. Pelle Larsson, who I know you and I both really liked when he was a Wildcat, played more than I expected as a rookie in Miami this past year. He had a really, really good tournament for Sweden, leading them to the knockout stages as well as their kind of top player. And it could be the Heat just kind of find these guys, whether it's in the draft or free agency. He was, an undrafted guy or a second-round pick, either a second-round pick or an undrafted guy. I can't remember, but kind of a scrap bin player, if you will, that they've turned into a rotation guy. And it feels like he could work himself into what maybe they thought Jaime Jaquez could have been. It just seems like he's a versatile guy that is starting to figure things out, at the pro level too.
Yeah, when the Heat picked him up,
We were both kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. The
Yeah.
Heat will turn him into a quality player. He didn't really miss any shots all summer. He shot like 57%, I think, from three on high volume. As the star player for Sweden, that was really encouraging. Obviously, he's a versatile player. He's a decent playmaker. He can play with the ball in his hands, plays both ends. Plays hard, hustles, and if he's able to be, obviously that's an unsustainable clip that he was shooting at in EuroBasket, but if he can be that in Miami, then he'll be a big part of that rotation this year.
All right, let's transition to talking about all three of these NBA teams and going over some of the biggest storylines. Like you said, with the NBA season about a month away, I'm planning to be at Nuggets Media Day next week, hoping to get some content for the show from that. Let's just start here in Denver with this team that I know you love and I really enjoy covering. It feels like the championship or bust era is back in the Mile High City, which is fun after the last two seasons ended in the second round with competitive series that went 7 games. But following that first championship for the Nuggets, they just weren't ever really back to the same level of team since that run. But it feels like all of the expectations have been put back on the squad after a really, really, really impressive summer by a new look front office that was not the front office I expected to see. After the end of the season, I expected David Adelman to come back as the head coach after what he did for this group in the playoffs. But the front office, I thought there'd be more of a shakeup, but it's more of an in-house kind of promotion with Ben Tenzer. But you also have John Wallace coming on board. Like that duo is the ones running the show, and they did such a good job flipping Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson, adding guys in free agency that make sense for this team, whether it's bringing back Bruce Brown and just the good vibes that he brings, or bringing in Tim Hardaway Jr. as a bench guy. Jonas Valanciunas trade, like we said, all of that stuff. They just did a great job of making this a formidable roster again at the top of the Western Conference. And obviously with Oklahoma City being so young and returning everybody from a juggernaut championship team, they're going to be at the top of the conference. But especially now with today's news, it's pretty timely that Fred VanVleet is out for the season with the torn ACL for Houston, who felt like the other really top contender at the top of the West. It feels like it's OKC and then the Nuggets pretty clearly number 2, and then everyone else is kind of, there's a bunch of teams in the mix after that. Does it feel like for you, Troy, that this Denver team is right back to where they should be in the Nikola Jokic era, which is, if they're not hosting a trophy at the end of the year, it's going to feel like a disappointment?
yeah, it does.
It feels like we've been harping on the same issues with this team for years and years and years, and this front office pretty much addressed all of them. They've
Stop me if you've heard this.
before, but they finally got the backup center. Hopefully this one works out. Valanciunas, he looked pretty good in EuroBasket. He has a defined skill set and a defined role that I think will help him. Just come in, get rebounds, be stout at the rim. You could play the offense through him a little bit if Joker's off the floor. So that will help, I think, the bench just flow a little bit more smoothly. He's a lot better offensively, I think, than a lot of the backup centers that they've had.
Yeah.
So that should help, especially like DJ. So that should help. I think the operation will run a little bit more smoothly. Bruce Brown can take a lot of that ball handling off the bench, even if he's not, the same kind of player that he was a couple of years ago. And you mentioned having him as a locker room guy is great. Tim Hardaway Jr. is the kind of player who should play really well off of Jokic. Great shooter, can space the floor. I love Cam Johnson. You and I both love Cam Johnson. So I really think that he fits seamlessly into the starting lineup in that Michael Porter Jr. spot. He'll be better defensively than MPJ was, which should be really helpful. And I think that you said it. I think it's Oklahoma City and the Nuggets at the top. And it's championship or bust. If you're in that top group of teams, I think they've done enough to break out of that kind of second tier that they've been in the last couple of years and get up to the top. And I think that, everyone else is chasing them right now.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a lot about the Nuggets, obviously, in the coming weeks before the season gets underway. We'll probably have Vinny Benedetto on to really do a deep dive on this team. But just quickly, Troy, before we move on from the Nuggets, who are you more eager to see how they look at the start of the season for this year from the starting lineup, from the non-Joker division, non-Cam Johnson division? Basically, who are you more eager to see how they look. Is it Jamal Murray or Aaron Gordon? Because obviously both those guys had very different seasons last year. Were excellent both at times. Aaron Gordon, best shooting season of his career, and then obviously had the disappointing injury that kind of derailed and ended any hope of taking down OKC. Just kind of what excites you about both those guys, and who maybe early in the season is going to be more important to define how the Nuggets look?
I think it's going to be.
I think Jamal is kind of the key guy. You mentioned Aaron Gordon shooting. That'll be obviously the thing to watch because he shot the ball so well last year. But even if that kind of declines, which I think it would be fair to expect a little bit of a regression there, you know what you're getting out of Aaron Gordon on a nightly basis on both ends of the floor. You know that he's going to play really well with Jokic. You know that when you get into the playoffs, if you need him to play some backup five, he can do that. And he's just going to put himself in the right spots to contribute and to impact the game, even if he's not shooting the ball really well and scoring. With Jamal, you've just seen so much more up and down, especially early in the season. We'll see. He got a good off season this year, so hopefully he's able to come into camp kind of ready to go and hit the ground running when the season starts, which he hasn't really been able to do recently. So that's kind of what I'm watching, and if that's what they need, right? When Jamal is off, you lose that ball handler, that extra scorer, that kind of isolation scorer outside of Joker to kind of free things up a little bit. And if they have that, and if Jamal Murray is really rolling, then this team can be a juggernaut like it was when they won the championship. So I think that's got to be the biggest. I don't want to say question mark because I think Jamal's earned at least enough benefit of the doubt to not classify it as that, but that's kind of the thing that I'm watching early on.
All right, I want to transition to the other team. Well, the other team in the time zone that has had the most amount of change in the offseason with a new coach, new personnel coming in and out. And that is obviously the Phoenix Suns trading Kevin Durant to Houston for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and what ended up being Kaman Malawach with the 10th overall pick. They hired Jordan Ott to replace Mike Budenholzer as the coach. A bunch of I would say for the first time since Chris Paul arrived in Phoenix, this is the first year where the Suns enter the year as kind of like a team not many people are paying attention to. It's kind of like Devin Booker and guys again. Like that was kind of what it was when they had that semi-breakout year when they almost made the playoffs in the bubble year. And then they finally kind of broke through the following year after getting Chris Paul and that team just kind of coming all together. Now we're back to that pre-Chris Paul era Suns where it's like, okay, there's Devin Booker is here, and there's a bunch of dudes who we don't really know what to expect. I mean, what do you make of this Suns team heading into a very weird year with, like I said, a first-time head coach in Jordan Ott? I'm always going to be a believer because he did his undergrad at Penn State. So there's that for him. But I mean, if this season goes off the rails and nobody. I mean, in a loaded Western Conference, absolutely nobody's even picking Phoenix to really be a top 10 team, even like a play-in team in this conference. I mean, is this Devin Booker's last year in Phoenix? Like all of this kind of stuff. Like how do you make sense of what is going on down there with everything that Matt Ishbia is trying to do with this basketball club?
Yeah, it's fascinating,
right? Because there's a few different interesting parts to it. Where one, I don't know. I'm curious to see if they're able to, especially with the new coach coming in, are they able to make it feel different than like the your turn, my turn basketball that it kind of was when, it was, long discussed that they didn't have a point guard and it was, just kind of Booker and Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal taking turns. And now it's Booker.
Bradley Beal is also not on the team anymore. I forgot to mention he got bought out and signed with the Clippers for a deal that now feels more and more questionable, which we're not going to get into. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but now it's Devin Booker and Jalen Green, and it's like, all right, well, they still don't really have the point guard. Is it going to be the same thing, but worse because Jalen Green's not the player that Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal obviously are? So I'm curious about that. And then I do think it's an interesting year for Devin Booker because, like you said, nobody's really talking about him. And I feel like with all of the Suns stink of the last couple of years, all of the turmoil that they've been going through, it's kind of been easy to forget the player that Devin Booker was, the monster that he was, coming up before Kevin Durant got to the Suns when this team went to the NBA Finals. Can he, now that he is back in position as the alpha unquestionably in Phoenix. Can he get back to that? Because it doesn't feel like that he's getting the kind of recognition as that kind of player after these couple years. So that'll be interesting. The other end of the floor, I don't know about the defense. This defense might be pretty bad. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting anything from the defense, especially when you're anchor. I mean, I don't really even know who's going to start at center. Like,
Yeah,
obviously,
that's another one.
They make the trade on draft night, not just for getting Kaman Malawach, but also getting Mark Williams as well. So it's just like it's really weird. Like, it's just a really weird roster. And I mean, if Malawach is going to be your guy at center, rookies are never good on defense, even though you and I were both pretty high on him in the pre-draft process. And I think he can be an interesting guy to play alongside Booker offensively, but the defense is going to take some time, like you said. Even though Devin Booker has showed, especially when he was on Team USA last summer, like, he can be a really, really good defensive player and scale down well to be a role player, but that's not what he's going to be anymore on this team. Like, he's back to, like you said, being the alpha, and he's going to be asked to take 20, 25 shots a game for this team and score 30-plus points a game because, I mean, if he doesn't have the ball, I mean, who else is going to be? It's going to be a lot of Jalen Green and some other guys. Like, it's just, like you said, it's a really, really weird situation there with the personnel, and it feels like this is just kind of a year in limbo for them where you got the first-year head coach who you believe in, feel like he can develop into something, and they don't want to be the team that is firing the coach year after year because that's what they've been the last couple of years with the veteran coaches that they've brought in, whether it was going from Monty Williams to Frank Vogel to Mike Budenholzer. Like, they've just been kind of cycling through these veteran coaches who people just know the names. Now they kind of believe Jordan Ott can be the guy that carries them into the next iteration. So I think we're going to know there's going to be a lot more clarity about the Suns next summer. I feel like about whatever happens this season, whether it's pleasantly surprising in terms of what the guys on the court do. Devin Booker kind of took a step back last year from a numbers perspective, but you and I are both still really high on him as like a top 10, top 15 guy for sure player in the league. And it'll just be interesting to see. He said he wants to be a Sun for life. He's never really wavered on that, but I'm eager to see how this season, if that at all changes things for him, and if the trade request comes at some point during the season or afterward. I feel like it would probably be afterward, but he got that giant extension, the MAC extension, obviously this summer, where he's going to be making upwards of $75 million in a couple of years. So I mean, all of that is looming for this team that, like I said, is really in limbo. But feels like whatever happens this season, we're going to know a lot more about this franchise. 10 months from now, even.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got, especially, they kind of need to clear up the front court is kind of front loaded right now. You've got Mark Williams, you've got Malawach, you've got Oso Ighodaro, who I know we both really like. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm not sure about him.
My guy Rasheer Fleming got him in the second round, so there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we were both big on Rasheer Fleming, so that'll be interesting to see him play. Malawach is going to get, who was my darling of the draft process, is going to get thrown to the wolves here on defense. So we'll see how that works. But yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of something where I don't really know what to do with it until I just let me see it for 2 weeks, and then we could kind of be like, okay, this is what they're trying to do on both ends. I don't know what it looks like, and that'll be interesting, and it makes them watchable for at the start of the season. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, at least even by Christmas, we're going to know a lot more about this team. Like you said, it's just we just want to see it. I just want to see it at this point.
I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot more about this team in the first couple months of the season. But the last team, obviously, here that we talked about on Basketball in the Mountains is the Utah Jazz. And another team that I just kind of want to see it with all these guys. Like we talked about Lauri Markkanen's really nice, impressive EuroBasket run, and maybe he has recouped some of his trade value. Like they just seem to be on a different timeline for what Lauri Markkanen's career is. It's obviously another rebuilding year. I still love Will Hardy as a coach. The Ace Bailey thing is going to be what it's going to be. I'm just intrigued to see what it looks like. I obviously were not high on him in the draft process, and particularly for a place like Utah, which it seemed like he didn't want to go to as well. I mean, it's just they have so many guys. Cody Williams had a decent summer league. Bryce Sensabaugh looked really good for the couple games he was in summer league. Filipowski, we talked about, was one of the on an episode a couple months ago, was maybe the biggest winner from summer league. They have a bunch of dudes that I just want to see how it looks coming together, surrounded by the few veterans they have left, because they really kind of cleaned house this summer with Jordan Clarkson being gone, Colin Sexton being gone, John Collins being gone. Like all of the guys that were kind of just around this franchise the last couple of years are gone, except for Lauri. And now it's Lauri and young guys, as they are undoubtedly playing for a top 3 pick this year and hoping to get one of those, what now looks like a pretty top clear group of 3 guys at the top of next year's draft. So what intrigues you about Utah heading into this year? Is it just similar with Phoenix? Like you just want to see it, even though we know what Will Hardy is as a coach, there's just a bunch of guys that still have to get used to playing with each other. And Utah just has to figure out who they want to keep around and who they want to proceed with this rebuild with.
Yeah, you just said it right there.
It's kind of like it's a season-long tryout. Like who's going to stand out? Who's going to be who's going to be here in the future? You know, you mentioned Bryce Sensabaugh has been awesome. Ace is going to be Ace. You know, for better or worse. He will score 40 points in a game in March at some point.
Yeah, that's absolutely going to happen. He's going to shoot like 10 of 15 from 3, and he's just going to go off one game. Yeah,
he absolutely will. Like I do think there's some intriguing storylines with this team though. Like, can Isaiah Collier be a lead guard? We saw some of that in summer league. There was some.
Yeah, he was disappointing in summer league, but it'll be an interesting season for him. Yeah.
Yeah, like how are they going to use Walter Clayton? Because obviously he has the ball a ton in college. Is he going to play more off the ball? I would imagine that would be a yes in the NBA. Obviously, I believe he can. Florida did it with him some. He was pretty good at it. So I'm curious to see how they use him. I want to watch Markkanen and Filipowski play together. I just think that that's a lot of, you know, the defense might not be awesome in those lineups, but there's just so much skill offensively with both of them on the floor, especially with what we saw from Flip in Summer League. So that'll be interesting. Where does Cody Williams fit in? Can he carve out a role defensively on a team where a lot of these guys are offensive players? You know, Markkanen, Filipowski, Clayton, a lot of the guards are offensive-minded players. Can Cody Williams carve out a role for himself on the defensive end? That'll be interesting to see. So, yeah, another one where just unleash the young guys and let's see what it looks like.
All right. Before we get out of here today, did want to hit on a little bit of college stuff. Obviously, I'm going to try to do at least one episode for every team, basically, that is really worth talking about, whether CU, CSU, Utah, BYU, Arizona State. We're trying to do episodes on all of these teams, and even some of the mid-major teams like Grand Canyon, Utah State, obviously all of the Mountain West teams we can hit. We're going to try to do single season preview episodes for all of these teams. But before we get out of here today, Troy, give me one team that if in the Mountain Time Zone that you are excited to watch in college season. It doesn't have to be big name team, can be whoever you want to talk about.
So I tried to go away
with from the 2 teams that you had on here, but Utah was going to be one of my teams, so we'll get to them. I had Arizona. I think that team's not getting a ton of buzz, and I think that they're going to be good. Like I think that they're going to be good, and it's the kind of team that I love to watch. They got a lot of length. They've got Krivas and Tobe Awaka, who I know we both talked about. He was great last year. They're back. They've got the 2 freshmen, Koa Pete and Braden Burries.
It's a really young team this year for them.
Yeah.
And all those guys are really highly recruited guys. And Tommy Lloyd had a great summer. He won the U19 gold medal for FIBA at the U19 World Championships. With AJ DeBanza was one of the key guys. I mean, the Boozer twins were on that team. Like, it was a nice summer for him, and obviously getting a bunch of those freshmen, which were all kind of late additions in the process. Like they were all like in the spring, like you said.
the last
few uncommitted ones. Tommy nabbed like the 2 big ones. I'm curious about Jaden Bradley. Will be really interesting because he's kind of the guy now as the lead guard there. Last he was coming off the bench some. KJ Lewis was there. Caleb Love was obviously handling the ball a lot. Jaden Bradley was one of the top scorers on that team last year, but can he kind of, now that the best players on this team, the best scorers on this team are probably going to be the freshmen out on the wings, can he kind of find the balance between hunting his own shot and being a table setter and keeping the offense moving? That'll be really interesting to watch for an experienced guy who's never really carried this much burden before. So I think that'll be interesting. But I think that team is going to be really good, and I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, obviously Krivas missing all of last year or most of last year was a big bummer, and they lose Vasar in the portal to UNC. Anthony Del Orso was a really good player for them. Started a bunch of games for them last year. Bryce James is on the roster. We'll see if he even plays at all. But part of that goes into it too. But no, I think Koa Pete, is a potential top 10 pick next year. I think he's going to be a really fun guy to watch. And like you said, guys like Toby Awaka, a year in the system. It's just going to be really interesting. They're going to be a big team, like you said, and Braden Burries, I think, is the most intriguing. Him and Jaden Bradley are the two guards that'll probably end up starting. It's just a very new look Arizona team after that team last year made the Sweet 16, lost to Duke and everything. So they're definitely going to be one that we're going to be talking a ton about on this podcast. I think they'll be preseason top 25, but I think they'll be lower than they should be. Like, I think they should be a top 10 team, but I think they'll be
one of
in
the
that
reasons I picked
15
them for this.
Yeah, 15 to 25 range is where they'll end up being. I'm intrigued to see what the first AP poll looks like, but you spoiled my pick, which was the Utah Runnin' Utes. I did a full podcast on them earlier in the summer. If you want to go check that out, my guy Steve Bartle from KSL came to talk about the first couple months of the Alex Jensen era. This is a new look squad. Almost everybody. There's only one real rotation guy that is back. Keanu Dawes played a bit for this team last year, but the rest of it is a new look team for Alex Jensen, who was a part of that national runner-up team from the late 90s. Obviously he's been coaching in the NBA for a long time and as an assistant. He brought Wes Wilcox with him from the NBA. Those two know each other from their time in the G League to be the GM and kind of help put this roster together. And it's a really interesting group. I think if you're looking at guys to watch, I think Ja'Kai Howard, the Auburn transfer, is the big name. There's a bunch of other guys that are from lower levels like Terrence Brown, Elijah Moore, like a bunch of guys that I feel like could be interesting players for Utah. And it's a new era for this program after the last couple of years not really going the way they wanted. It's still been almost a decade since they made the tournament. I just think, I'm not sure what the expectations are going to be in Salt Lake City for this team this year, but I think, like I said, it's the start of a new era, and I think there's going to be some encouraging signs that this program is back on the right track with Alex Jensen.
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm really
excited to kind of see what Ja'Kai Howard looks like now that he's going to have a bigger role than he got on a crowded Auburn team. Terrence Brown, I think, was at 20 points a game last year.
Yep, yeah.
So that'll be fun to watch. This backcourt can really, really, really score. They've got a couple of Western Kentucky guys in, Don McHenry. I'm blanking on the other's name, but they'll be fun to watch. Really good guards that can score it. You mentioned Ja'Kai Howard, so I'm excited about them in kind of being in one of those middle of the pack Big 12 teams, kind of taking a step up from where they've been the last couple of years, and seeing obviously what it looks like with Alex Jensen in there.
Yeah, the other team I was going to talk about, if you had picked Utah, was going to be BYU, sticking in Utah, just because there's going to be they won't be preseason number one in the Big 12. That's going to be Houston, but they're going to be preseason top 2 or 3, with obviously adding
national top 5, top 10 national.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of people on the Cougars train heading into the season with obviously a potential top number 1 overall pick with AJ Debinsa, as the headliner there. Spent his last couple of years playing prep ball in the area. Just a huge get for that program, and I really like what they did in Kevin Young's first year last year. Richie Saunders was a Big 12 Player of the Year candidate for sure, and he's going to be one of those guys that's preseason All Big 12 again this year. So and obviously they went out and got Rob Wright, the third in the transfer portal. They spent a ton of money on this roster, and there's a ton of high expectations in Provo for this squad.
Yeah, I love the Rob
Wright edition. Obviously, Dybantsa is going to be the big one. They got Kennard Davis in there, another really good transfer who can score it in the backcourt. He'll be really good. You mentioned Richie Saunders, who was great last year for them. Keba Keita's back. He's an experienced big guy in the middle. So on paper, they've really got all of the pieces that you want in a contender, and it'll be interesting to the how they handle. This is their first year with real expectations like this, so that'll be interesting how that kind of plays out. Rob Wright was on a Baylor team that didn't handle it great last year, so it'll be interesting to see what this BYU team kind of looks like, how they handle that pressure, especially early in the season with a big ranking, and then we know the gauntlet that the Big 12 is.
All right, Troy, appreciate you coming on for this first episode in a while on Basketball in the Mountains. I'm sure you'll be back on at some point in the near future, once the NBA season gets back going in college as well. So appreciate you taking the time to join us here.
Yeah, of course, man. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, that'll do it from today's episode of Basketball in the Mountains. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. Obviously, a lot of college football coverage on there right now. But like I said, going to be getting back to basketball stuff here on the podcast, which is obviously available on Apple and Spotify as well. Make sure to go comment, follow the show, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Leave a 5-star rating. All of that is super helpful for me for growing the show. I'm really looking forward to this basketball season. Obviously, starting the podcast in the middle of last season, just kind of catching up to speed on things. Really trying to nail down what we want out of the show here and get a schedule going. But I'm excited for what's to come in these couple months. Like I said, we're going to be talking a lot about obviously the 3 NBA teams, but obviously trying to preview each of the college teams as best we can ahead of the season, which obviously starts in the first week of November, which is coming up. I mean, I'm just super excited for hoop season. The start of the college football season has been fun to be a part of, and I'll be on the road, in a couple weeks as well when CU goes to Fort Worth. So appreciate everybody that follows my work at the Denver Gazette and all of my YouTube content with football. But everybody who knows me knows this is my bread and butter here, is covering hoops and talking about all the teams we've got here. So thanks everybody for watching. If you're doing so on Spotify or on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, all of that is super appreciated by me. Thanks everybody again, and thanks to Troy for coming on, and stay tuned for what's next.